All right, I'm gonna go anyway, don't make me shout. Okay, welcome everyone. It's great to see you all here on this very, very, very warm day. Whew. I don't know about all of you, but I'm pretty exhausted from the events of the past couple of weeks. Right? The events themselves, the debate, the court rulings have been one thing, but the unending anti-Biden analysis has been mind-numbing. The New York Times has had more than 192 stories about Biden's performance in the debate and its impact in just the few days that followed the debate. So I want to talk to you for a few minutes about operational thinking, which is something Karine knows about. Operational thinking is not about making things perfect or even better. It's about keeping things going. When a critical system fails, you can't take the time to figure out what happened. You can't spend time thinking about what it might cost to fix or where you might find a replacement. You have a job to do, and you have to find a workaround and keep things going. A lot of our critical systems are failing. The Supreme Court has anointed Trump with presumptive immunity, which I'm not a lawyer, but Southern states are comfortable enough with the court's decisions to try testing a really big issue, religion in the classrooms. In Tennessee, every classroom is soon going to have its own copy of the Ten Commandments. And in Oklahoma, the state superintendent of education announced that teachers will soon be required to teach the Bible. Oh, yeah. So, and Project 2025 has shown us exactly what a Trump presidency will look like. The president of the Heritage Foundation said last week, we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be. That should be a wake-up call for absolutely anyone who entertains the idea of not voting or a protest vote, or God forbid, maybe Trump's not that bad. This is where we are. The house is on fire, and this is not the time to start thinking about new furniture or bathroom redo. We need all hands on deck to get this fire out once and for all. Thank you. It's okay to applaud, it won't upset me. There we go. There is no joy, no good news in what may or may not be happening to Joe Biden. It is not an opportunity to get someone better, to get someone younger, more diverse, more exciting, maybe a woman. It's a tragedy, certainly for President Biden and his family, and for us as a country, because he has been an excellent president. And he seems to be showing signs of diminished cognitive capability. But yeah, right? Aren't we all? But the house is on fire, and we have to stay focused on that. Polls may move the needle next week or later on this week, one way or the other, potentially leaving us with a choice. Biden or who? My view, and this is my view, my opinion, it is not the opinion of Democratic women of Greenville County. My view is, if Biden does not withdraw, I'm not sure there is a mechanism to force him out. And if that's the case, we must recognize reality. In a world of Biden versus Trump, I would choose a diminished Biden every day and twice on Sunday. Because Biden at his best has given us amazing results in the past 3.5 years. Yeah. And if he is slowing down, he will have an effective vice president and cabinet. They will stand when he can't, they will protect our democracy. The House will not burn down under his watch. If Biden withdraws, this again is my opinion, it must be Kamala Harris. First, she is the vice president, the person we have already elected to stand in for the president if he is unable to serve. Second, she's an experienced legislator who knows both Congress and the executive branch. And she has been Biden's partner in legislative achievements of the past 3.5 years. And finally, not to be discounted, she's the only one legally entitled to touch the $240 million currently in the campaign's bank accounts. And damn it, she's a woman. And a mother, and a woman of color, and a woman of achievement. An opinion piece in the Times yesterday aligned with Jim Clyburn in calling for a mini primary in the 5 weeks between now and the convention, with candidates all over the country throwing their hats in the rings, doing interviews, town halls, placing ads. And I've got some questions about that. How much visibility can any of these candidates get? How do they campaign without a pretty good sized war chest, which they presumably have not been amassing for media buys? And I wonder, if we had a male vice president right now, would that even be an issue? It does sound like the Democratic way to do things. And it would be if this was February or April. But the House is on fire, and throwing open the convention seems to me to be throwing Molotov cocktails into the flames. Most analysts believe the end result would be a disaster, sending a divided party into the most consequential election of our lifetimes. The last example of this was 56 years ago in Chicago. Some of us will remember that. And if we are old enough to remember, we can remember what an excrement show that was. Thank you for appreciating my effort to keep it clean. And Nixon beat Humphrey by 110 electoral votes. But if it does go to an open convention, whoever emerges the victor must be the candidate for each and every one of us. The House is on fire, and we must all agree on one thing. We cannot let a crazy arsonist burn it down because we didn't get something we wanted. It's all hands on the line, side by side, grabbing a hose. Last week, the country celebrated the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. Begun under JFK and signed by Lyndon Johnson, the bill prohibited discrimination and segregation based on race, color, sex, religion, or national origin. The last few years have seen efforts to roll back the achievements made possible by that law, reversing affirmative action in colleges and universities, and similarly DEI efforts in corporate America. Censorship in the classroom, the banning of books, all have their roots in taking us backwards to the 50s and beyond before civil rights. If the worst happens, which I do not believe it will, and Trump wins, we had best be sending every Democrat running for federal office to Washington. Catherine Harvey in CD4 and Brian Best in CD3. We must control the House and Senate to keep Trump from getting any of his authoritarian, anti-democratic, anti-gay, racist, sexist impulses through Congress and passed into law. What he can do on his signature alone is catastrophic. Think Project 2025. We can't give him the shade of US law as well. And just as a thought for President Biden or whoever carries the Democratic standard, I believe it can bring a lot of Democrats, into the fold if they would hold a press conference and announce this. When I am elected, if you give me the Senate that we must have on January 21st, I will submit the names of 5 jurists to the Senate for confirmation to the Supreme Court. The House is on fire, but it is still salvageable. if we all stand the line. Okay.
Yeah.
I wish I'd mentioned months ago that it was okay to applaud. Gee. Okay, so I used up a lot of my time there, so this was going to be a quick lightning round of news items. First, the bylaws. Thank you to those members who voted on updating our bylaws. The proposal was approved unanimously by those who participated, and those bylaws are now in effect, just in time for our election. The current board's term expires in January, and we will have elections in November. As our bylaws call for, we have constituted a nominating committee to take on the task of developing a slate of candidates, which will be presented at the October meeting. The committee members are Jen Bothy, Abby Collins, Shelley Deason, Glenda Morrison-Fair, Anita LeBold, Anita LeBold, Linda Neely, and Marsha Wallace. As I understand it, they will have their first meeting next week, elect a chair, and get on with the job at hand. I want to thank each of the members for their willingness to take on this task and for their support of Democratic women. Our first quarterly membership contest ended on June 30th in a tie between Helen Nixon and Peggy Baxter. The board decided to split the baby, so I have $50 gift cards for each of you. And if you see me afterwards, I will give you the card. And thank you to and welcome to the 29 new members you all signed up. You may have noticed that we haven't had any fundraisers this year for ourselves, but we do want to thank those who donated money to our drive to support the United Way School Tools program. We raised $600 and used it to purchase 75 books to be distributed. We also asked for support of our effort to write postcards to swing states in the form of funding the cost of postage. I want to thank Councilwoman Dorothy Dow for her incredibly generous contribution that covered nearly the full cost of postage for 1,000 postcards. We're going to start writing them soon, and we'll be doing them at the meetings for the next 3 months, so I'll get extra pens. Several others have also donated, and we're going to use that to offset the postage increase that is going to take effect July 14th. So you probably noticed I am not the only one with a t-shirt on today. Some board members are wearing this very cool t-shirt that Jen is going to model for you. Jen also designed it. Yes, stand up if you got it. There we go. So we have, this is a summer special. There are cards on the table where you can order the t-shirt with the QR code, and I'll also send out the link so that everybody can do that. It's a quick sale, open now until July 15th. Orders must be made through PayPal. We'll order the shirts and we'll bring them to the August 12th meeting for you to pick up. Hopefully you guys will wear them out and about and further help to publicize that Dem Women are here, especially for all the Democrats we know who are out there who haven't found us yet. And finally, we're going to be starting an effort to sell sponsorships for the meeting to businesses and organizations that share our values and commitment. For $150, a group will get mentioned in our invitations, our meeting-related graphics, and the donkey's tail, and a slideshow, and we'll have the option of distributing material on the tables during the meeting that they sponsor. If you have any ideas for organizations, for businesses that might be interested in that, please let us know. Before we get started hearing from our candidates today, I'd like to take a quick moment to recognize any elected officials who are with us today. It's very exciting for me to see new people at our meeting, so I would like to recognize those of you who are attending for the first time. We like to do this public embarrassment thing. So if you have a flag, if you got a flag sticker when you checked in, if you wouldn't mind standing up for just a second. Oh, wow. Wow, that's impressive. Excellent. And finally, if we have any new members tonight, if this is your first meeting as a member, if you would stand up. Not sure we do. One. Oh, and Jim wanted me to mention, when you go online to order your t-shirt, which all of you will be doing, in the note field, if you're using a credit card, in the note field, you put your size, but size up. Because that's why I'm wearing my Biden-Harris shirt instead of my women Greenville County.
This is large. This is extra large. Evelyn has on the medium. I'm on an extra large. Right, so.
Yeah, so size up. I don't want to forget to say that.
And if you use PayPal without the credit card, there's not a spot to put your size in. I'm going to check with everybody who orders before I place the order to make sure we have the right size. That's why I have the cutoff date, and I'll check. So you can either send an email or I will get in touch with you. Don't worry about that, but I will make sure I speak to everybody before we place the order.
Terrific.
$30.
$30. Now on to tonight's candidates. Candidates are going to have 5 minutes to speak, followed by an opportunity to take 2 to 3 questions. If you have a question, write it down on the index cards on your table. And when the speaker is done, hold it up and someone will collect it from you. Our first speaker will be Stephen Dreyfus, who is running for House District 20. Stephen has run for the seat before, and he comes by his political chops honestly. His mom was a state representative. Professionally, Stephen has been an addiction counselor and a college professor and is now retired. Stephen, you have the floor.
My name is Stephen Dreyfus, and I'm running for House Seat 20 using the campaign slogan, Democracy Matters. I shouldn't be standing up here this evening. I'm up here now because no other Democrat picked up the gauntlet to run against my Republican opponent. I ran for this office 4 years ago. I ran a great campaign, but I lost. Failing to raise enough money, I ended up spending far too much of my own. I don't regret running, but I came to the conclusion I just wasn't wealthy enough to be able to run for office again. In 2020, 3 other Democrats were considering running for House Seat 20. This year, there were none. So I literally waited until the 11th hour before registering to run as a Democrat, as no one else was willing to do so, or so I thought. When I arrived at the Electoral Commission, my campaign manager, Hugh Owens, called me. He told me that earlier that day, Adino, a Democrat in name only, who didn't support Biden, decided to run as a Democrat because there was already too much competition on the Republican side. By pretending to be a Democrat, he hoped to get to the electoral finals without participating in a Republican primary. As it turned out, the Dino was disqualified for being a candidate as he had a criminal record. No candidate with a serious criminal record should ever be allowed to run for office. But there is something just as bad as a Republican running as a Democrat. And that's no Democrat running at all. Every race, regardless of the odds of winning, should provide a Democratic candidate for the voters to choose.
Right.
I decided to run because I believe democracy matters. Democracy provides the foundation of our government, and preserving our democracy should be beyond debate or discussion. It is an axiom that people should choose those in power rather than those in power should rule over the people. Although democracy is fraught with myriad difficulties, any other form of government is far worse. And just what are the alternatives? Anarchy and rule by lawless gangs and the force of guns, authoritarian dictatorship where the head of the state is above and beyond the law and can perpetrate any atrocity or injustice and can rig the system to stay in power indefinitely. America didn't want a king, even if George Washington were the king. Our basic freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, the right to assemble, and the right to have autonomy over our own bodies. All of these have no chance of surviving unless our democracy survives. The binary choice is either violence or voting. It should be a no-brainer that voting is preferable. But too many Republicans have no brains. They are so hopelessly enthralled with the cult of Trump, they would prefer him to become dictator with absolute power rather than have elections which determine a winner. Many Republicans are willing to jettison democracy for fear that in the near future, minority groups will make white Americans less than half the population. Make no mistake, when Trump says, "Make America great again," he's really saying, "Make America white again." Republicans like to argue we're a republic, not a democracy. They like the word republic because it's in the word Republican. They don't like the word democracy because it sounds too much like the word Democrat. So what is the difference between a democracy and a republic? There isn't a hill of beans worth the difference. Both words mean virtually the same thing. Get rid of democracy and the republic falls. Other previously democratic countries lost their democracy and succumbed to dictatorship. And make no mistake, it can happen here. If Trump becomes president again, the death of democracy in America will be imminent. And once gone, democracy rarely comes back. But for democracy to thrive, we need to do more than defeat Trump and Trumpism. We need to work to protect and improve our democracy. There's several specific things we can do to improve our democracy and our voting. We need to abolish the Electoral College so that every citizen, regardless of where he lives, has one vote equal to every other citizen.
Yeah.
The Electoral College is a dangerous anachronism, a deeply flawed compromise that gave us the worst president in U.S. history, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But you already know that. We need to protect everyone's right to vote and end voter suppression. But you already know that. We need to get big money out of politics and eliminate Citizens United so that ultra-rich billionaires and corporations can't buy elections. But you already know that. We need to eliminate gerrymandering once and for all. The voters should pick the politicians. The politicians shouldn't pick the voters. But you already know that. We need to make voting easier for everyone, such as making Election Day a national holiday.
Yes.
But you already know that too. But what you might not know is that our system of voting, called plurality voting, is the worst possible system of voting. Plurality voting, where each voter gets to vote for one candidate, works fine, providing there are two and only two candidates. When there are more than two in the race, as frequently occurs in many elections, the electoral outcome can be terribly wrong, undemocratic, and unfair.
Stephen, do you have a closing statement?
Let me just get this. Al Gore won the popular vote in 2000, and Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in 2016. You already know that. But what most people don't know is that even with the Electoral College in place, Al Gore would have beaten George Bush if only we'd had a better system. Hillary Clinton would have defeated Donald Trump if only we had a better voting system. Today, the Republican Party is trapped within the thralls of a dangerous, dictatorial, demagogic, lying megalomaniac who spews hatred and racism. Trump is unable to lead the country. He can only divide and destroy us. The question is this: how can the Republican Party die a natural death unless we can safely allow the alternative third party to take its place? The answer is simple. By replacing our present system with three-option voting or one of the other systems, we can safely ensure the integrity of elections without denying the most democratic choice. God willing, we will win in November.
Yeah.
But when we do, it will be no time to rest on our laurels. Then it will be time to work to protect and improve democracy. Democracy matters.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing to add on to what Stephen just said. God willing is one thing, but if we fail in November, it will be because we failed. We didn't do what we needed to do. We didn't get the people out. We didn't get out and work. We didn't lift our hands up. So we all have to kind of take that on our backs. We can't blame a higher power for our failures. Okay, thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that. Our next candidate is Karine Debaty. Karine is running for County Council District 22. She is an engineer who also has an MBA. Her experience is in financial audit and project management, and she's held positions at Liberty Life and Michelin. Karine, you have the floor and 7.5 minutes.
Before I start explaining who I am, I just would like to share something with you about my personal life and politics right now that may give us some optimism. Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me here? Okay. So I have friends. I've been here for 30 years. I have friends that are Republican and I have friends that are Democrat. And I'm running for office for the first time. And I've had a few Republican friends, my only few Republican friends, who totally embraced my campaign. They jumped into it. And they said, enough of Trump. We won't do that again. So we have around us also Republican here in South Carolina, here in Greenville, who are not going to elect Trump. And I want to say that because I sense that my Democratic friends, they gave up. They are not even sure they're going to go to vote. They say, Karine, we know you're going to do a fantastic job, but it's a lost battle. It is not. Look in France, and I'm not saying that because I have a Southern accent, very Southern accent, because I'm from the South, I'm a country girl. But look, everybody thought they would vote extreme right. 20% more French people went to vote, and they did that, sorry for the gesture, to the extreme right. And we're going to do that to Trump. And he's evil. And then I want to say something else. I'm the little ticket here. I'm only running for county council. But the change starts at the bottom. The change starts at the ground. We need to have more and more Democrats. We need to give a choice to our voters. They are not even sure they're going to see a Democrat on their ballot. That's why they don't go to vote. And this is why I decided to run for office. I'm like, they're going to see a Democrat, even if she has a Southern accent. So, 2 minutes already. So I'm running for County Council District 22. It was, the incumbent is 10 to Holocaust, a very, very MAGA, stupid, idiot guy. Sorry for the French. And he is backing up Frank Farmer, who is going to be my opponent. So Frank won the primaries of the Republican, and there were 4 candidates. He won because he had lots of money, and he had lots of money because Stan gave him lots of money, because Stan has lots of money. So please give me money, 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 money. And I already raised some money, pretty good, but I need way more. If I want, so my district is pink. Even though I'm in Greenville, South Carolina, I'm in a pink district, which means I can win, and I will win if I can go and talk to people, if I can reach out to people. Because in my district, when we look at the numbers, some people are not going to vote. Some people are discouraged whether they are Republican or Democrat. So if I can reach out to them, and for that I need communication, therefore money, I will win. Any person I can talk to will vote for me. I'm sure about that. So I need to reach out to these people. So that's my race. And what I'm running for. Like everybody, we see that the county, the growth in our county is going berserk. It's going in all directions. I'm a conservationist, and it hurts me to see all these green spaces going down like one morning for the other one. All the trees are gone, replaced by what? Car wash. And we know how many people work at the car wash. Storage facilities, and we know they are empty and nobody works there. Gas station, and we know they are going to go away. There is no choice. What else? We have subdivisions that are poor quality. So we see the heat waves. We know we are going to be hotter and hotter every summer. And here are these people living in conditions that will be horrific, little by little. So this is where our county is going. I asked to have a meeting with the director that worked with the comprehensive plan. And my conclusion is that there is no comprehensive plan. It's like developers do whatever you want. You're in charge. We know that people have no more housing. I have young kids, they are in their 30s. Nobody can offer a house, and they are engineers, and they can't. They just can't buy a house today. So, but when you look at the comprehensive plan, so what? We're going to keep building things that nobody can afford. Nobody prepares at the county level for that technological transformation of solar energy, geothermal energy, wind energy. We need mix of energy if we want to have low-cost energy in the future. Nobody cares about that. So I want to run for office and bring my project management and business skills to develop the comprehensive plan such to include this type of necessities for the future. So with a foresighted mind, and it's 6 minutes. And so I want mixed communities. I don't believe subdivision, separation, division is the future. I want transportation, public transport. I want people to be able to go to work easily. They need childcare to put their kids in. They need transportations because most people cannot afford to buy a car no more. So we need transportation. We need local businesses that will bring skill set that we need for the future. Tomorrow is not going to look like today. We are facing challenges because of the not climate change, but not global warming, but that thing that is happening with the weather. Don't give it a name. So we here in South Carolina, and especially in the upstate, we have everything to build communities, even at district level, even at county level, so that we are resilient for the future, so that everybody has a job, so that everybody is trained for the future. We need trees to protect from the heat. And this is what I would like to do. And to do it, I need to challenge the comprehensive plan as it is today. And I need to challenge the idea that developers know what we need. So that's my major. So I need money. My campaign manager can give you my website. I need money and I need volunteers. So right now I will need volunteers to send text, to knock on doors. and people who could host events for me where I can go and talk to a crowd of people, especially, and it doesn't have to be in my District 22, but for candidates, it's always good to be seen and to be able to talk to people. So if you know anybody who could host something for me, that would be wonderful. And money. That's better. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Karine and Stephen. Next month's invited speakers are Representative Chandra Dillard, Representative Wendell Jones, Shauna Johnson, and Octavia Amici. I got a flash news report today that, as I was walking in here, that I wanted to let you know about. So I'm gonna jump in before I introduce our featured speaker to tell you that in September we have Miriam Rosenbaum. She is on the Democracy Futures Planning Team for the Brennan Center for Social Justice in New York. Will be here in person, I'm told, to discuss in detail Project 2025.
Oh, wow.
So you will not want to miss that. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are nearly 1,300 miles away from the nearest border location. Yet every day in Greenville, immigrants struggle to make a life in the U.S., to comply with shifting immigration priorities, and to keep their families together. By all accounts, immigration is one of the top 3 issues in this presidential election. But the issue is a lot more personal for Jessica Wallace, who confronts the human face of this political football every day. Jessica is an immigration attorney who founded Wallace Immigration Law in May 2023. She's also the chair of the legal team for the Hispanic Alliance. A native of Greenville, she attended Emory University and the University of Salamanca in Spain. I assume that means she speaks Spanish. I do not, so if I mispronounced, I apologize. Her practice includes defending clients in deportation cases, assisting with green cards, visas, family support, citizenship, and humanitarian relief. In her work for the Hispanic Alliance, she's a source of information for community members, and she helped to establish the Alliance's annual citizenship workshop, where local attorneys and volunteers aid immigrants with their naturalization applications at no charge. In recent weeks, we've seen some executive action on immigration. Jessica will talk through the essence and impact of these changes and give us her unique insights gleaned from an on-the-ground view of immigration through the lens of her clients and the challenges they face living, working, and struggling to stay in Greenville. Thank you for being here, Jessica. Jessica, you have the floor.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
All righty. It's really comforting to know that you guys are here fighting the good fight and that we're not alone. And it's so important what you do. And I really commend you for it. And it's so important to make sure our voices are heard, even if it feels like we're alone. Sometimes it makes me feel really good to know that you guys are all here keeping up the good fight. As Laura said, I am an immigration attorney here in South Carolina, in Greenville. And I just kind of want to give you some context to what I see on a day-to-day basis, what some of our immigrant families are facing here in Greenville, South Carolina. Because sometimes when you are that far away from the border, it feels a little removed, but it's really not. It's right here in our county, in our cities. So on any given day, I might meet with a U.S. citizen husband who wants to petition for his undocumented wife, a father who's facing deportation and separation from his U.S. citizen children, an undocumented victim of sexual assault who's seeking work authorization, or maybe a Haitian immigrant who wants to renew their temporary protected status. However, the overwhelming majority of cases that I see in the recent months and even years are asylum seekers who are looking for refuge in our country, the greatest country in the world. And especially within the last 3 years, I've seen more and more asylum seekers coming through Greenville looking for opportunities that we can offer them here. Predominantly people from Colombia, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico. but also some from Russia and Ukraine. We're seeing a lot of diversity in the people who are choosing to make their home in Greenville. Unfortunately, recently, as you all know, we've been inundated with some hysterical rhetoric about these recent arrivals, labeling them as rapists, murderers, and for some reason, fugitives from insane asylums. I'm not sure where that one came from. I don't have to tell you all this, but it's absolutely not my experience, and it's not what statistics show about our immigrant communities. Research shows that immigrants are 60% less likely to end up incarcerated than US citizens. And the people I see in my office every day are mostly women and children. They mostly fled their countries due to domestic abuse or deaths of their male relatives. I also see a lot of family units who are fleeing violence and poverty. Unfortunately, violence and poverty is not enough to achieve asylum in the United States. The asylum laws are very strict. It's very difficult to win. And that is especially true in our jurisdiction, where we have judges who approve less than 6% of the asylum cases that they hear. However, it's still important to keep fighting for these people and their families, and that is what I do. We fight, and we won asylum for several people that really deserved it. For example, I'll just give you a 9-year-old Honduran child who was raped by her cousins and subjected to horrific abuse by her family members. A Nicaraguan man who was targeted by the government after he protested the regime. A Salvadoran girl with a physical disability who was forced into domestic servitude. A Guatemalan woman who was shot and watched her uncle killed in front of her after attending a political rally. And these are all people in our community. I've changed the details a little bit, but these are all people that live with us every day. The wins are few and far between, but they make everything worth it, especially for these families. As the election season is ramping up, we also have heard a lot about immigrants receiving all of these public benefits and how they're a drain on the economy. And you all know that's also false. It's a myth, it's a lie, and it's really unfortunate. Legal and undocumented immigrants pay sales tax, property tax, consumption tax, and many undocumented immigrants even pay income tax. They'll use a tax ID number or a false social security number, although I don't recommend it. It's what some people have to resort to do just to work here. And some even, unfortunately, have their wages garnished for child support from a US citizen, which I've seen before. Even lawful permanent residents have to wait 5 years before they become eligible for public benefits like Medicaid and food stamps. So the lie that undocumented immigrants are receiving public benefits is outrageous. In South Carolina, undocumented immigrants can't even get a driver's license. Surprisingly, this is the #1 complaint that I hear from my undocumented clients is the inability to have a driver's license. They can put up with the exploitative wages that they receive for working under the table, but not having the driver's license and the constant fear of being pulled over and possibly arrested for driving without a license is the #1 anxiety-inducing experience that they have. Also in South Carolina, we have what we call a 287G cooperation agreement with ICE. So what that means, if you're driving without a license and the police officer decides to arrest you, which they can do for driving without a license, and you go to jail, our jail tells ICE that you don't have papers. And then ICE can detain you at their discretion. And that's something that other states may not have. So mostly conservative Republican-run states have these 287G agreements with ICE. South Carolina is also unique in that some immigrants with lawful work authorization cannot obtain professional licenses to pursue their careers. And so that means we have people with DACA or temporary protected status or victims of crimes who have work authorization who can't use their professional license or obtain certification here in South Carolina. So we're effectively shipping our talent out of state so they can use their licenses. So that's what we're dealing with here in South Carolina. But even though the states can impact immigrants' lives with local policy, the majority of immigration policy is at the national level. Federal immigration agencies and courts make decisions on individual immigration cases. And I'm sure you're not surprised to know that the Supreme Court hasn't done us any favors this session on immigration policy. So the court recently held, and this was just June 28th, US citizens do not have a fundamental liberty interest in their non-citizen spouse's ability to come to the United States. That's not a right that we enjoy. I thought it was a right to marry the person of your choosing, but the Supreme Court differs from that, does not believe it. They rejected a woman's bid to just review the decision of the consulate to deny her husband's visa because they claim he had a gang tattoo. It wasn't a gang tattoo. They presented evidence that it wasn't a gang tattoo, but he has no due process. There's no way to challenge that, and the Supreme Court affirmed that on June 28th. So she cannot live here with her husband, even though she's a US citizen. The court also somehow found that the government is not required to inform a non-citizen who's in removal proceedings of the date and time of their hearing when they initiate the removal proceeding. That one was interesting too. The court has overturned a case called Chevron recently, which gave deference to agencies. Now this one surprisingly might help me in my career because I'm always fighting the immigration agencies and their silly decisions. But I think overall that one's going to be rough, and it's going to mostly benefit large corporations and lobbyists. But because these federal agencies create and implement immigration regulations, the executive branch has enormous power over immigration policy. And most importantly, whoever is in charge of the current administration controls which immigrants are priorities for deportation. So under Biden, criminals, terrorists. Under Trump, everybody is basically how it went. And all of that did under the Trump administration was create an enormous backlog of immigration deportation cases that made it harder to get rid of people that don't need to be here, the real people that are threats. So there have been other executive actions, as Laura mentioned. We've recently gotten a Biden border proclamation. Congress, as you know, was ineffective in coming up with a solution for migration, even though they got the best deal they were going to get on immigration in decades. So Biden felt, I'm assuming, forced that he had to do something. So he did issue a border proclamation that shuts down the border after a certain number of crossings. This is a concern, due process, because we have to make sure that people who need asylum, like my 9-year-old Honduran client, are actually getting screened and given an opportunity to ask for asylum. So that one's not great, but I think politically it was probably necessary. The other Biden executive action is that he has implemented a plan to allow US citizens who have spouses or children in the United States to request parole in place for those spouses or citizens. This is to help avoid the situation of the Salvadoran guy with the gang tattoo. These people won't have to go to the consulate where you can't review a negative decision and you get stuck in El Salvador. They can stay here and request their permanent residency here and avoid the Department of State and that proceeding, which is not guaranteed and is very risky for most people. It's not in effect yet. We're expecting lawsuits, unfortunately. But what we do know is that Trump will rescind this policy if he's elected, and no one will be able to take advantage of it. So this is kind of where we are now. Speaking of Project 2025, the stakes are extremely high, as you all know, and with immigration, especially high. So just a glimpse at Trump's immigration plan in that document that was published. Shows that he intends to eliminate all immigration relief for victims of crimes, expand the use of the horseback mounted border patrol and absolve them of the human rights abuses they committed against migrants at the border, allow the use of tents to house civil immigrant detainees at the border, in all discretion and deportation proceedings, arrest all undocumented immigrants identified through those 287G programs like we have here in South Carolina. Even if you've just been arrested for driving without a license, ICE has got to detain you under Trump's policy. Allow the civil arrest, detention, and removal of immigration violators without warrant or due process. Making arrests, this includes making arrests at places that were previously identified as safe zones, like churches, schools, hospitals. So what does that mean? Immigrants are afraid to go to church, take their kids to school, get medical care. And create a denaturalization unit to revoke people's citizenship, repeal temporary protected status for people from countries where there's ongoing strife, in protections for unaccompanied minors, stop the intake of new immigration applications. So even if you're married to a US citizen, they're not going to adjudicate your application if they have too many applications. And of course, our favorite, build the wall, is put a cherry on top. So
Still gonna pay for it.
yeah, sure. So if he's reelected, I will probably spend the next 4 years filing bond motions for clients to try to get them released from civil immigration detention and get them reunited with their families. That's pretty much what I did for the 4 years under Trump. It was hell. So it's very important for our immigrant community here in Greenville and all across the United States that we don't let this happen. I know that there will be litigators on the front lines that will challenge every racist, unconstitutional program that he puts into place, but it's our tax money that's going to defend those racist, unconstitutional policies. So the stakes are high. What can we do? Specifically on immigration, make more voters, make more citizens. So that's why I head up the citizenship workshop with the Hispanic Alliance. It's annual. And if you're interested in volunteering, our next workshop is on August 10th. I have some flyers and I also have information if you want to volunteer at the workshop. And then after we make the citizens, don't alienate them. Reach out to your immigrant brothers and sisters. Make sure that they know our message, because a lot of them come from countries where they hear the left and they're thinking Hugo Chavez. They're not thinking, a right to choose, right to freedom of the press and freedom of religion. They're thinking gorillas in the forest, and not the good kind of gorillas. So don't alienate them. Make sure that they are embraced by everyone here. And as we know, fear mongering can be really effective, and that's why Trump does it so often. So it's also important to tell positive immigration stories, like some of the ones I've told today, and get to know immigrants in your community and hear their immigration story and their background and disseminate that. Make sure people are hearing those stories. You can also donate. We have great candidates here that I'm sure are also wanting your money, but we have also some good local organizations that aid immigrants in our community and some national ones as well. And that's all I have for you today. But if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Jessica. Just don't move.
Oh, sure.
Stay right here. So, did you write your question on the card? No, you did. Excellent. Excellent. Well, while we're getting that, I know I am a little, retentive about that kind of thing. I'm fascinated by the last thing you said, revoke citizenship. How's that work?
So of course they can't revoke our citizenship if we were born in the United States.
Oh.
These are people who have naturalized. So they're gonna, after you're naturalized, that usually means immigration's gonna leave you alone. You are on the same level as a United States born citizen. Trump wants to create a unit to go back and review those naturalization cases and see if they can poke any holes in it, and then try to go back and denaturalize people.
That's unbelievable. Is that even feasible?
They did it before.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna let Anita raise her question because I can't read it.
Did I hear you say that after I become a citizen, that can take on the average 10 years? I spoke for like 5 more years before I can get services like Medicare.
So not citizen. So first step is green card. You have to be a green card holder for either 3 years if you're married to a US citizen or 5 years before you can apply for naturalization. But if you're just a green card holder, so it's the permanent resident, but you can't vote, you're just here and you have permanent authorization, you're not eligible for public benefits until after 5 years of permanent residency.
Where do the immigrants in Greenville live? Are they mostly in apartments or?
So I work mostly with the Hispanic community. Most of my clients live in apartments and mobile homes, trailer parks, are most of where they live, yeah.
Back to one of my questions. What is the current status of DACA?
So as of now, because as soon as Trump was elected, he rescinded DACA, which put a pause on all DACA applications. So no new applications were accepted. And people were worried they weren't even going to be able to renew their DACA. There was several court cases, and the Supreme Court ultimately, before our current iteration of the Supreme Court, said that USCIS had to continue adjudicating those renewals of DACA for people who already had it because they had a reliance interest on those applications, and also businesses that were employing them, their families, had a reliance interest on the DACA. So right now, USCIS is accepting only renewal applications of DACA, but they're not allowed to adjudicate any new applications. So what that means is I probably have 5 or 6 clients where we filed it before it was rescinded, and they're just sitting on them. They can't do anything with them. There's ongoing litigation in the Fifth Circuit on the DACA, the authority to create the DACA program itself. And we're still waiting on the ultimate results of that, which in the Fifth Circuit, it will be struck down and then it'll get appealed up. So.
Can you talk about how long it takes for an immigrant to go from coming into the country, especially maybe an undocumented, and to becoming a citizen? What is the process and the length of time?
Sure. So it depends on the type of process we're doing, but I'll give you the 2 most common scenarios. So scenario number 1 would be asylee seeking asylum. If you're seeking asylum and you're not in deportation proceedings, it can take up to 10 years or more to have your asylum application heard by USCIS. So I have a client we filed in 2014, still haven't been interviewed. If you're filing defensively, it depends on which it means you're being prosecuted for deportation. It depends on where you live and your judge's calendar for how quickly your asylum case is going to be heard. The other most common scenario I see is for undocumented immigrants who marry US citizens. A lot of people think, oh, you're married to a US citizen, you're good to go. No, no big deal, just file your application and you get your green card. Not so. So the first step, if you entered without permission into the United States, is you have to file the marriage petition. That can take a year or more. Then you have to file a waiver of your unlawful presence in the United States, which can take up to 4 years or more to get adjudicated. Then it depends on what country you're from. So if you're going back because you have to do a consular process, this is what Biden's parole program is trying to solve, this issue. If you're from Mexico and you have to process through Ciudad Juarez, it could take 2 years. So it can take 6 years, even if you're married to a US citizen.
How much does it cost for an immigrant to get a green card?
Again, it depends on the type of process you're doing, and if you have an attorney. So the USCIS recently raised their filing fees. So just in filing fees alone, for that process that I just explained, you're going to probably spend about $3,000 plus your travel, your hotel, and the consulate. If you have an attorney, which most people need because of the language barrier and because of the complex legal issues at stake, attorneys can charge from $8,000 up to $15,000 to get those cases done.
Well,
so it can be very expensive.
well, let me ask this question then. since you most likely have clients with limited resources, how do you or your team get paid?
Yeah, so I have kind of a sliding scale policy. I try to work with people, but I have to get paid too. And most people come up with the money and they come up with cash and they pay it because it's important to them, because they know, without this, they can't climb, they can't get anywhere without status in the US. There's also organizations, but in South Carolina, we really have a big gap, which I'm sure you're all not surprised to hear. We have Catholic Charities, and they will take some cases on a low-cost basis. And also for victims of crime, there's some organizations that I partner with, and I'll take those cases at a pro bono or low bono basis if there's a victim.
Are there any benefits that an undocumented person receives in the US once they arrive here?
So the big one is education. The Supreme Court has said if you are present in the United States, the school can't turn your child away if they're a minor. That's a constitutional right that even undocumented immigrants have. Emergency medical care, obviously the hospital's not going to turn them away, but you'd be surprised about how many undocumented immigrants actually pay in full for their medical care, even though they don't have insurance. And they take those bills really seriously, at least in my experience, a lot of my clients do. And then also there's some emergency medical care, like for, I think it's emergency Medicaid for pregnant women. But there's really not many that they qualify for.
How realistic do you think Biden's border control plan is?
He's going to get sued. The asylum statute requires that the US government screen asylum cases and provide an opportunity for people to seek asylum. So I think it's probably going to get struck down. He may have known that when he put it into place. I think there's a lot of political maneuvering going on, but also I do get concerned about people's lives when they really are fleeing really terrible, violent conditions and they come to the border seeking help and they just say the border's closed. But it's a horrible situation. It's really hard to know what the right answer is, because you can't just leave it open. You can't just have people come in for a free-for-all, because I talked to a lot of people who were paroled in at the border and I say, okay, why are you afraid to go back? I'm not afraid, I'm just here to work. Well, sorry, you're not eligible for anything. So you really shouldn't have probably gotten in. So that's kind of where I stand on it. But.
So last question, unless somebody else has something else. I've heard that Project 2025 says that there are eventually 11 million people would be deported out of the US under that plan. And I'm curious if you have any insight into what happens to the US economy if we remove 11 million immigrants from the country.
Yeah, I mean, look, I talk to employers. So I actually have employers that come in with their employee to my office. Let me help him. How can I get him status? And they're like, I can't find anybody to do these jobs. So what's going to happen when these people are deported? I don't think it's feasible to deport 11 million people. I think that's ridiculous, but it would tank the economy. There would be no one to do these jobs. Construction, agriculture, yeah, landscaping, house cleaning. Those are the major ones.
The jobs that Americans are really being kept out of.
Yes, and also some manufacturing jobs in our area.
Any thoughts on whether or not the bill in the South Carolina House that's been offered a couple of times by Republican, I have to say, Neil Collins, that would allow DACA recipients to get certification? As my understanding is now, if you're in the state of South Carolina, you're a DACA recipient, you can go to college, you can go to beauty school, whatever, but you cannot get the certification that actually allows you to be a doctor or a teacher or whatever. So they've tried several years to change that.
Correct. Yes. So unfortunately, the last I heard, it died in committee. And we just have to keep pushing for it. And that's what I was talking about, shipping our talent out of South Carolina, especially for these DACA kids, because they've been here since at least 2007. That means they're probably educated in our schools, and they're basically Americans, and we're shipping them out. I have a client who's a nurse She's like, I want to stay here. My whole family's here. She's in New Jersey. So it's just, we just have to keep pushing and use those allies, even on the Republican side that we do have, and make sure that they hear from the DACA kids, because I think that they really are very sympathetic to both sides of the aisle.
The child separation policy. What happened to those kids and their parents?
They don't know. Some of them, they don't know. Some of them are reunited. The ACLU did a lot of really great work trying to get them reunited with their family, and also trying to get them benefits. So because of a court settlement, immigration agreed to allow those families to apply for parole, which gives them like a 4-year stay, a 4-year work permit for them and for their families. And it also helped them bring in some of the moms and dads that were deported to come back. Now, I personally have not seen anyone get brought back in, but I do have one family in our county that was affected by family separation. And luckily they were able to reunite. A lot of great lawyers at the border were able to reunite them. And then once they got to me, we did the parole, and now the whole family has parole, but it's kind of an open-ended question on what happens after those 4 years are up. So we're just kind of waiting to see.
Well, that sounds like it's kind of more luck and good work on the part of attorneys like yourself who care about what's going on than actually a process.
Right. So the families were expected to register on some website. And I only found out about the whole process through a listserv that I'm a part of as the ALA, American Immigration Lawyers Association, that puts out news. And that's how I found out about it. I'm like, okay, well, I know I have this family and they were separated. They're supposed to be able to navigate the internet, figure out this website, hear about the program, register, put in their alien number, and then make sure they're on the list of people who are identified as separated. And then after they get this certification letter, they can file parole applications. So without help, I don't see any way that anyone would have figured that out on their own.
Well, the last thing is, if you would send me the links for the things you mentioned, because I'm sure there are some of us who would be interested in helping out with the citizenship workshop.
Absolutely. And I'm going to leave some flyers with y'all too.
Leave some flyers, and I can make some copies or take a screenshot, and we'll definitely get that out to our whole group. And thank you so much for. Absolutely. Okay, thank you, Jessica. That was fantastic. Tons of information. Next month, we are going to be tackling a very important issue. What the heck do young Democrats want? What are the issues? Will they vote? What do we have to do to get them to vote? Or will they sit out? God forbid. And why don't they see the house on fire that we do? Our panel will consist of Evan Lawton. He's the president of the South Carolina High School Democrats and a Greenville resident. Jacob Taylor, president of the Furman College Democrats, and Kirsten Pruitt, GCDP's third vice chair and president of the Young Dems of Greenville County. So kind of going to run the gamut of great ideas there.